Are you finding it difficult to immerse yourself in a movie, or maybe just kick back and read a book for a couple hours? Maybe you used to get absolutely lost in your favorite album, but you no longer can really sit there and kind of slog it out through the whole thing, or you're just not finding it as pleasurable as you used to. Of course, there are serious medical reasons and psychological disorders that can affect your attention span. So if any of those things are your concern, please talk to an expert. I'm not an expert in any of those areas. But if you, like many of us, are having trouble connecting with your favorite music, maybe just having some alone time with your favorite album, then I have a few tips that might reawaken your passion for music and make it a little bit easier to get past that kind of initial resistance. I'm David Hughes, this is Charcuterie Sound, and this week we're going to be looking at music and attention span, specifically practical steps that you can take to reconnect with the music that you love. So let's do it. So a few really important points to start things off. Yes, it does seem like our attention spans are decreasing, at least when it comes to media consumption, and also that psychologists generally see this as a bad thing, or at least it's not ideal for your overall sense of well-being. Those are some pretty broad strokes. We'll dig deeper in just a moment. And of course, there will be sources and further reading in the description. That being said, some of the tips in this video are from the world of psychology, informatics, cog-sci, and others are just kind of anecdotal things that I've noticed that have helped me, but I'll be sure to let you know which is which. But enough of that, let's look at our first tip. So one thing that people tend to get wrong about attention span is that it's this singular resource that depletes at a more or less constant rate over time whenever we engage in a task. The reality, as you might have guessed, is a little bit more complicated than that, and knowing why can really help free you from your darting, constantly exhausted state of mind. And here we'll start with a good scholarly foundation. And for those of you that almost pieced out when I said the word scholarly, resist the tug, give it a second. I've recently been looking into the work of Dr. Gloria. She's an expert in attention, maybe the expert in attention. She's Chancellor's Professor Emerita of Informatics at the University of California, Irvine. And instead of focus being this binary thing, her findings seem to indicate that there are actually 4 different states of attention. And that will really matter to us when it comes to music listening. And these states of attention fit on a matrix, measuring the amount of engagement, but also how challenging a task is. As you might have guessed, yes, challenging tasks are more difficult to focus on, but there's more to it than that. There's focused. So this is when a task is challenging, but your level of engagement is also very high. This is obviously a very useful state, and depending on the type of listening you're wanting to do, this might be where you want to sit for your listening session, ideally. So our next state of attention is rote. This is when you are somewhat engaged, but the level of challenge is extremely low. So this would be like doing your laundry, mowing the lawn. This is not necessarily a bad type of attention. It's just very different from her focused state of attention. If you're listening to music that you're already very familiar with, you might be listening in this rote attention state, especially if you're doing something else at the same time, cooking dinner or something like that. The next state is bored, low challenge, low engagement. Your phone is dead and you're zoning out at the dentist's office. Also not a really detrimental state to be in. You gotta be bored sometimes. And our last attention state is frustrated. This is where there's a high level of challenge, but a low level of engagement. And I think this definition of frustration might actually be really useful for us when it comes to music listening. It reminds me a lot of comments that I received on my How to Like Jazz video. An issue that a lot of people had before trying my approach was that they were just jumping into very abstract, dissonant, experimental music, which is not something that all of our ears are tuned into. It's an acquired taste. It can just sound like noise to the untrained ear, but if you've listened to a lot of jazz and you can hear what they're doing, it becomes more palatable, less frustrating. While those that started with less challenging styles had a lot more success, and eventually were able to, in some cases, enjoy this very abstract jazz. And I think that's the important bit when it comes to this way of looking at attention. Like if you feel like your attention span is completely shot, don't start with highly challenging music. that you've never heard before. Don't jump into an entire anthology of albums, because a really long listening session, I think, might lead you to the same frustrated state where it starts to get challenging, even just to hang in there. And that's not where we want to be. Meet yourself where you are, you know? Something that might be useful is this awesome list of short albums that I found on Album of the Year, put together by user Chazamate. So whatever you're into, there's metal, there's punk, there's rap, there's pop, there's rock. You're going to find something. And each of these is going to be a tight 40 minutes or less album. And if you're really having trouble with your attention, just split it in half. Do 2 20-minute listening sessions. And if you've never been one to listen to full-length albums, I would seriously implore you to do so. It's extremely rewarding. You get to see the artist's full vision for their project. You can discover gems that were never released as singles. And you'll also develop a better understanding of a particular moment in an artist or group's career. Anyway, on to the next tip. So journals are amazing things. People see better results at the gym when they keep a journal. They might just even expand your working memory, not as an extension through the journal, but actually improving your mental faculties. They can add order to things that are otherwise abstract or obscure. Helps you check in with yourself a little bit, regardless, I think, of what your journal is ultimately for. And I think keeping a listening journal is a great idea, even if you're not like a music listening hobbyist. I found that keeping a little listening log for each listening session is a great way to kind of trick your brain into shutting up a little bit. It forces you to focus on things that you might otherwise tune out. It's kind of like focusing on your breath during a meditation, or knitting while you're listening to your favorite podcast. It gives your brain just enough to do to kind of distract it from the barrage of thoughts that might otherwise happen. I can be vulnerable to these intrusive stress thoughts, so for me, giving my brain a little rote job to do can really help. Of course, I still do think there's great value in having a listening session, which is just exactly that, listening deeply, but we're not always in that state of mind. So journaling is a nice compromise. This is just one of my tips. I find it helps distract the, monkey mind a little bit. And there's just something satisfying about watching a little notebook fill up with scrawls and doodles. I don't know. That's just me. So here's where we're going to use a little bit of environmental psychology to give you the best shot of enjoying that album you've been looking forward to. And thankfully, this area has received a lot of attention from researchers. Basically, you have this attention bottleneck where things in your literal visual periphery can compete for your attention. They compete with the task that you're trying to do. And this is even more difficult when that competing element has its own stimuli, like a visual blink or a buzz. A study published in the Journal of the Association of Consumer Research suggests that even having your phone somewhere you can see it reduces your available cognitive capacity. The reason, too, is actually pretty interesting. The causal sinew seems to be that your phone, even just being there in the same room, it's taking your brain effort to ignore the signaling from that object. I'm not talking about radio waves or something. It's just the behavioral signals, When you see your phone, you pick it up. There does seem to be a very clear effect on cognitive capacity. And if you've ever been to the movies and felt your phone vibrate in your pocket, you know how serious just a little bit of stimuli can take you out of a moment. This also means maybe try not to use your phone as your main music listening device. If it's all you have, that's okay. Maybe just keep it out of sight with a Bluetooth device and notifications silenced, obviously. It's the brave thing to do. And also, this doesn't just have to be your phone. If there's another source of visual stress in your room, maybe put it away. I don't know if it's your work laptop or the overflowing hamper of laundry. I'm looking at one right now. Anything that you can do to make your space a little bit more relaxing and peaceful is probably a good idea. How's that? Probably a good idea. So let's go back to Dr. Gloria Mark and her longitudinal studies on attention. She's found that our attention spans, specifically when it comes to screens, have dramatically decreased in the last 20 years. According to her research, our attention spans when it comes to screens have dropped from 150 seconds to 47 seconds. If you're still watching this video, you are killing it. But don't worry, you're not weird for not being able to make it through Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. You're doing something a little tricky. Our brains have been primed for this fast signal to reward kind of relationship, scrolling through Instagram or Reddit. So the thing is, with long form media like an album, the signal comes just as quickly, but the reward is more drawn out. And I mean, some of the best things in life have this longer, more drawn out reward structure. Dr. Wolfram Schultz, a professor of neuroscience at Cambridge University, calls this mismatch between the expected immediate reward and reality as a reward prediction error. So if you feel a little bit let down after listening to your, former favorite artist, don't be too hard on yourself, because it may not be that you've just, outgrown this phase in your listening. It could just be that you're not getting that reward as fast as you might be used to these days. So this one's a bit anecdotal, but I find it to be incredibly fun, and it's really changed my relationship with music. I collect records, and maybe you should too. I can already hear the anti-record heads in the back. Yes, you can fit a lot more music on a thumb drive. Yes, you maybe have a higher fidelity setup. Just give me a second to explain, and I promise I won't say anything about the warmth of the sound or how artifacts add to the experience or anything like that, okay? I think record people and non-record people can get along one day. For me, it really is about the little ritual, the chunk of repeatable behavior that comes before I start listening to music. Choosing the record, reading the liner notes, pulling the record out of its sleeve, and finally dropping the needle. It's physical, it's tactile, and it kind of primes my brain for relaxation. I've done this literally thousands of times, and I find it always helps to clear my head a little bit. If you run, this could be the equivalent of lacing up and stretching, or if you cook, it could be honing your knives and getting all your ingredients ready. It's just something that's always there when you need it, and it precedes some sort of task that you get gratification from. Even for music, it doesn't have to be records. Maybe it's putting on your headphones, taking a sip of coffee, and just looking out the window on your morning commute. But whatever it is, if you do it frequently enough, it becomes a habit. And habits are fantastic cheat codes. It helps you to offload some of the willpower that you might otherwise have to use. Although if you become a record collector, it can become very expensive. It doesn't have to be, but it can. Anyway, I know this is a bit of a different and a shorter video for me, but I've just had so many people bring this up that I felt I would share some of the things that I do and some of the things that I've learned that have made my listening experience a little bit better and my attention span a little bit longer. If you found this interesting or useful in any way, please consider subscribing or liking. It helps a lot, especially with a small channel like mine, and I really do appreciate it. My videos are all about building a music listening hobby, learning about new genres, kind of expanding your musical horizons in a sense, and learning about the philosophy and psychology of music. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and as always, keep listening, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.